If you want to take a target out from far away, a sniper rifle is going to be your go-to choice. Now, as for not getting caught in the process, one of the best outfits around at the moment would be a ghillie suit. Now, I'm sure those of you old enough to remember Call of Duty 4, you're still haunted by just how effective they can be. Fast forward 38,000 years into the future, and I'm sure the military's long advanced away from covering themselves in twigs and leaves. My money would be on that they've invented invisibility cloaks by then, but how could you convert that effect to paint? Now, I've designed these vinyl stencils here just to help us paint this look as fast and easy as possible. I actually made them for some nail art I was painting, but I saw the stencil line there and I thought that'd just be perfect to transfer over to a cape. If you'd like some for yourself, you can either message me if you want and I can send you over the artwork for you to cut yourself, or I can get them cut and post them out to you. I'll put a link in the description of the video if you want to get hold of some. Now, the stencil is totally optional. You can still get the transforming effect without using this, but this just sort of adds a bit of a technology vibe to the cape over it all being magic. So, step 1. You just need to separate the two sections. Now, you want to keep hold of the hexagon net part. The leftover hexagons we don't need, but they might come in useful for something else. And then all it is a case of wrapping that net over the cape and smoothly pressing it down into each fold of the fabric, just to ensure nothing is left unstuck. The better it's all stuck down, the sharper edge you'll get. Now, I'm just using the back of a paintbrush here just to make sure it really gets into those creases. And if you want to warm the vinyl with a hairdryer, it will just soften all the vinyl and give you extra stretch and flexibility just to help it all roll right into those creases everywhere. Now, support for the backpack really gets in the way of that, however, so ideally you want to just cut that area away. A real sharp blade just hooking it underneath and pulling away from the cape should be plenty of effort just to cut through it. And now the only other step to achieve this look is to just spray over the whole back of the cape with a grey. Now, I actually mix this grey myself in the airbrush just with black and white, so you don't need any specific colour, any old grey will do, but ideally something in the region of Skavenblight Dinge will be perfect. Once that grey is dried, demask it, and look at that! How cool is that? And even more so, how easy was that? Now, this is the sort of thing you could do a lot of models in just a couple of hours, but it needs a bit of depth added to it now because it looks pretty flat. So, as is the unwritten rule of shading, the first thing we want to do is slap a nice coat of Nuln Oil over the whole cloak, and that'll run and settle in each of the folds and creases. Now, you want a nice coat, but you don't want it to pull too heavily either. So if you do get any excess puddles, just wick it away with a clean brush. Now, what's a shadow without a highlight? Now, I want to keep the whole tone of the cape dark still, so we won't go over the top of these. All we're going to do is a nice thin line of Dawnstone over each of the high points on every fold along the cloak, just to pick out the curve of the fabric. Now, this is the part where we use the second stencil I designed. This one is how we're going to get that transforming effect. So, as before, first of all, you just need to separate both halves of the stencil. It doesn't matter what half you use, as they'd both work. And now you need to apply it following the pattern you laid earlier. It should cover up a path of hexagons across the bottom, but don't be afraid to cut it up to reposition areas to line up a little better if you need to. The top edge is the only part we're focusing on getting neat here, but you will need to cover up any gaps that develop from you moving the stencil about. Just a little tape will do fine. Now, you can do this step with a dry brush if you'd like, but the effect will work so much better with an airbrush. The airbrush gives you so much more of a softer spread of paint, so however you're doing this though, you want to definitely get white first of all, and just spray a nice thin coat along the edge of the mask you've just applied. Just let half of the spray pattern flow onto the cape, and the other half onto the mask. If you're doing this with a brush, just set up your brush the same as always when you're going to be dry brushing. Just put the paint on, wipe the excess off, all of that sort of thing. But instead of brushing across the surfaces, you just want to stipple the paint along the edges of the mask just to give it a similar look to the airbrush is given. Now, still leaving everything masked up, we're going to add a nice blue tint to that glow. Grab some game ink blue from Vallejo and just apply a nice thin coat over all those white areas you've just painted. Now, if you're doing a brush method, just glaze the layers of ink over the top, but let each layer dry before you apply the next. And then we're going to add some intensity to the glow now. So with white again, you just want to follow the same path as you did before, but go a lot more concentrated with where you're applying the paint. this wants to be a much finer edge than the blue. Demasking that layer, look at that. It looks a little strange with the black on the bottom, but you can't deny you've got a great looking edge glow here. It's really selling this effect that we're aiming for. Now every single one of you is going to have a different step here, so I can't really tell you exactly what to do. But this stage is now to apply the exact same effects to the bottom of the cloak as to what you put on your bases. So for example, my bases, they're a Martian wasteland style. So for me personally, I need to apply the same textures as I do on my bases. So for this, I use a mix of Martian Ironearth and Martian Ironcrust. So with a cocktail stick, I just apply a nice thin coat of both in a bit of a randomised pattern, but make sure no matter what you do, you don't cross over that edge onto the glow of the cape. Then to finish my Mars pattern off, once it's dried, I take some rust weathering powder from Humbrol and just dab it all over the areas where I've applied this texture paint. But again, no matter what, do not let it pass over those glows. This stuff is messy, like I can't describe enough how much of a mess this makes. Get everywhere, and for hours, if you're not careful, everything you touch is just going to have an orange stain. So if you're going to be using weathering powders, just be ultra accurate where you're putting these and don't handle it once you've put it all down. And all that's left to do now is just assemble the mini, paint it to whatever faction you wish, mine obviously an ultramarine, and then they're complete. Now I wasn't really planning on showing you guys this, but I actually painted a previous pair of capes before this and I didn't apply that second layer of white over the glow. I just instead brushed on a stippled white line over the blue, but comparing the two, it just doesn't look anywhere near as effective. It's crazy to see the feedback I'm getting on this channel after just 5 videos. It really means a lot to see all your comments and messages. If you do ever want to get a hold of me, you can message me on Reddit. I'm also available on Discord now, and if you really thought the video was good, you could say thank you with a cup of tea. As I said earlier on, if you'd like to get your hands on any of the stencils I've made, I'll put a link in the description just where you can get yourself some. Thanks so much for watching the video. If you want to see how I painted the rest of the mini, including all the armour panels, well, I've got a video here where I did the exact same method on my Hellblasters, so just check that out if you want to see that. Once again, my name's been Paul, and I'll see you on the next one.